Arata is a 16-year-old boy, the eldest child and heir to the wealthy Shunji family. He lives with his 5 beautiful sisters and spends most of his time surrounded by girls. Even though that might seem like a dream, Arata doesn't have a girlfriend. He wonders how to find one, but his quiet and passive personality doesn't help at all. He believes in fate, but sometimes he doubts it will ever bring him someone special. One day, out of the blue, Arata asks his 15-year-old younger brother, Shin, how someone gets a girlfriend. Shin, more focused on his phone, says he just went with the flow. That answer isn't enough for Arata, who asks where this mysterious flow even is. Shin understands that his older brother feels a lot of pressure being the heir, but thinks he's a bit too serious about everything. Shin remembers that Arata once liked a girl, but Arata insists he only said she was pretty. So Shin tells him to stop being such a coward. He says that, as the future head of the powerful Shunji family, Arata could probably choose any girl he wanted. Arata says he doesn't fully believe fate will hand him someone, but it's hard to believe fate doesn't exist either. Just then, the sisters walk in. Buka, also 16, says that kind of talk isn't good for the family's image. Siha, 17, jokes that 30% of boys' conversations are about girls and 60% are about what they do with them. Manami, who's 15, adds her own calculation, saying 80% of boys talk about the same stuff. Banri, the eldest sister at 18, points out that Manami's math doesn't add up. 14-year-old Kotono stays quiet, while Oka jokes that Arata probably pressures Shin to tell him about his love life with his girlfriend. Arata quickly denies it. Still, Shin betrays him, saying that Arata once commented on how Oka's body was becoming more mature. Offended, Wuka sends her dog Velzel to bite him. Wuka even jokes that the dog should have gone for a more painful spot. Arata shouts that he would never think about his sisters in that way, but the girls don't care and happily feed the dog as a reward. Minami says Arata is lucky he wasn't locked up in room 8 for what he said. Banri thinks Oka is being too harsh on him. After all, it's normal for teenage boys to have wild thoughts sometimes. Luca responds that it's those thoughts that make Arata's imagination go wild, especially when Banri walks around swaying her body in front of him. Banri admits she understands why he's surrounded by attractive sisters all the time. Seiga argues that having feelings for a sibling isn't natural and goes against science, especially with all the risks of inbreeding. But Banri says that not everything about the human mind can be explained with logic. She then teases Siha, asking if even the science princess hasn't fallen in love. When Siha says she hasn't, Banri laughs and points out the blush on her face, calling her and the third sister babies. Even with all the chaos, Minami says Shin is actually a cool guy. Shin thanks her, but suddenly gets punched in the stomach by the same sister. Shocked, he asks why, and Minami says it's because she had just been playing a fighting game and her body reacted on its own. Luka thinks Minami might have reflexes that act on their own. Seiha adds that she might be strong enough to be an Olympic athlete. Changing the subject, Banri says Shin is actually quite handsome. Luka agrees but says his bad attitude ruins everything. He doesn't make good use of the good looks he got from their father. Then Luka asks if the boys are free on Saturday for Kotono's birthday dinner. Shin says he only has plans on Sunday, so Luka decides both of them are free without even asking Arata. Kotono, the youngest sister at 14, asks Arata herself, and he says his plans aren't important and he can change them. The next day at the subway station, all eyes are on the sisters. The 5 Shunji girls are well known for their beauty, each with her own fan club. They're treated like local celebrities. People stare at them in amazement, and the same goes for the 2 brothers. Just like the girls, they draw attention wherever they go. People nearby can't help but envy the boys who get to live with such stunning sisters. At school, Arata sighed, finding it funny that people envy him for living with his 5 sisters. If they knew what the girls were really like, they wouldn't think that way at all. Shin, always a bit philosophical, said that people usually only see what's on the surface. Arata agreed, saying the girls were like the ruling party in their house, while the boys were the powerless opposition. The girls could hit them, but if the boys tried anything, they'd be in trouble. Even her father always took the sister's side. Shin remembered being bullied as a kid, but since he lives with 5 beautiful girls, outsiders still imagine his life is like a romantic comedy. In reality, each sister had her own strong presence. Banri, the oldest at 18, was already in college and training to become a nurse. Her kind and calm nature made her very popular. Siha, 17, was in her final year of high school and the president of the science club. She was the top student in the whole school, and even though she was cold and distant, that made her even more admired by some. Luka, the third sister, was in her 2nd year of high school. She was both smart and athletic, one of the top runners and swimmers, and highly respected. Minami, who had just started high school, was a tennis prodigy who won the elementary school championships 3 years in a row. People even said she could be an Olympian someday. Her Her tomboy style made her popular with both boys and girls. Finally, Kotono, the youngest, was still in elementary school. Her gentle and innocent personality made everyone around her want to protect her. She had many devoted fans and was considered the sweetheart of the family. After hearing this whole summary, Arata reminded Shin that he only saw the girls as family, nothing more. But Shin asked about Kotono, which caught Arata off guard. Arata said again that they were siblings, and even if she once said she liked him, it didn't change that fact. Then through a nearby window, he spotted the girl he actually had feelings for. Shin pointed out that people might envy Arata's life, but they didn't understand how his past made him passive when it came to girls. That night back at home, Arata looked up the profile of the girl he liked, Yokoyama. He thought about sending her a message but hesitated, feeling like he needed a good reason to do it. He remembered Shin calling him too passive, so he shook his head, trying to snap out of it. Just then, Uka knocked on his door. Since they were both 16 and in the same grade, she wanted to borrow his notebook to check some notes. She noticed how neatly he organized his schoolwork and commented that having a twin was useful sometimes. But Arata couldn't help noticing how light her outfit was and asked about it. Uka was annoyed. She didn't think she'd have to worry about that inside the house, especially since they used to bathe together when they were little. Uka then brought up the rumor that Arata liked someone and wanted to know who it was. Shin had only told her part of the story. She insisted that, as twins, they should share everything. But Arata reminded her they were fraternal twins, not the same as identical ones, which made her even more annoyed. Finally, he admitted he thought Yokoyama was attractive. Uka got excited and said she and Oka were on the same committee at school. She could introduce them. She grabbed her phone, ready to help, but Arata asked her to slow down. He didn't want her interfering too much. Uka insisted it was her duty to help, especially since he was the future head of the family. But Arata said he wanted to handle things on his own. Frustrated, Uka shut the notebook, stormed out, and slammed the door. Before leaving, she said he'd never find a decent bride that way. That evening, Kotono was alone in her room, staring at a photo of all the siblings together. Her eyes filled with tears as she focused on her older brother, Arata. The next day, Arata was already fed up with school. On his way home, he wondered about his life if he weren't part of the Shunji family. As he walked, he saw Yokoyama talking to another guy. They had planned to meet there, but it didn't bother him after all. Fate had already decided everything for him. Fate decided his number of sisters, the wife he would marry, and everything else about his life. Nothing could change it. That evening, Arata was preparing for dinner. It was almost 7 p.m., and he could hear his sister Uka descending the stairs wearing a beautiful dress. Arata thought about how fate determined everything in his life, from who he would meet to the life he would lead from beginning to end. As he was reflecting, a loud argument between Oka and Minami interrupted his thoughts. Uka was angry because Minami lost one of the AirPods she had borrowed. Minami raised her voice, reminding Oka that she had also lost their mother's brooch earlier that day. Shin tried to calm things down, but only got worse. Both sisters claimed they didn't want to be sisters anymore. Arata raised his voice to stop the argument, reminding them they were all family. Uka didn't want to listen, but Seiha asked everyone to hold off as their father was coming home. Soon their father arrived and sat down at the table. Uka raised a toast to celebrate Kotono's birthday, but their father interrupted. He said he had something important to tell them, something he had planned to say when Kotono turned 15. But before anything else, he assured everyone that nothing would change his love for all his children. Then he dropped a bombshell. None of the children were actually his biological kids. Arata stood up, shocked, asking what he meant. Their father explained that all of them were adopted, and he had promised their mother, Chihiro, that he would tell them when Kotono turned 15. He revealed that Minami and Shin were the only real siblings, and Arata and Oka weren't even twins. This revelation stunned Arata and Oka, who looked at each other in disbelief. The father said he would answer any questions they had, but since it was Kotono's birthday, he wanted to keep the evening joyful. The maid, Yamaguchi, was called to bring appetizers, but the mood was already ruined. The dinner felt awkward, and everyone sat in silence, reflecting on how everything they had believed about their family was a lie. After the meal, Banri, the eldest, dismissed the maid and gathered the siblings to talk privately. Everyone sat down with some tea, but no one could really eat. Minami was the only one who ate, as food was the one thing that made sense to her. Banri said that even though they weren't biologically related, they would always be siblings to her. She assured them that their bond was more than just blood. Everyone agreed, but Kotono looked sad, though she tried to hide it. Later that night, Arata lay in bed, still shocked by the news. But Banri's words helped him feel better. What mattered most was that they had always been together. As he reflected on this, he couldn't help but think about Yokoyama with that boy. He decided to take a shower to clear his mind. In the bathroom, he noticed a bra in the laundry basket and realized why people might think their home was like a romantic comedy. Despite everything, he believed their father had kept the truth hidden until they were mature enough to handle it. And even though nothing would change the facts, his life would continue the same, surrounded by his beautiful sisters. As he finished his shower, Arata was startled to see Kotono already in the bathtub. She had seen more than she should have. Embarrassed, Arata rushed to his room, but Kotono asked him to scrub her back like they used to when they were younger. Trying to act normal, Arata quickly finished the task and told her to learn to do it herself next time. Meanwhile, Shin found Oka and asked how Arata was handling everything. Uka felt bad for Kotono, especially since it was her birthday. She thought everyone should support her more because she was the youngest. Shin agreed, but he knew Arata would still be the protective older brother. He reminded Oka that only he and Minami were the real twins. The news of their adoption was bound to change how people saw the Shunji family. And with a new revelation, it seemed that now the family might even be able to marry among themselves. Arata froze in shock as Kotono suddenly stood up and hugged him tightly from behind. Meanwhile, in the dining room, Uka was confused and unsettled. The idea of romantic feelings between siblings, real or not, seemed strange to her. She couldn't imagine anyone in their family thinking that way. But she couldn't ignore the way Arata had been staring at his sisters lately, longer, more thoughtful stares than before. Her thoughts began to spiral. She remembered the time she had seen Arata on top of Kotono. She never really understood what had happened then, only what it looked like. Now curious, she asked Shin to explain. Shin was hesitant at first, unsure if he should say anything. But when he saw how serious Uka looked, he finally gave in. He told her that Kotono had confessed her feelings to Arata that day. What Uka saw was the moment after she tried to hug him and he, surprised, tried to stop her, causing them both to fall. Uka rubbed her temples, finding it hard to believe, but knowing Kotono, it made sense. Kotono was always dramatic and emotional. It was worrying. Now that she knew they weren't related by blood, there was a real chance Kotono might keep trying to pursue Arata. Back in the bathroom, Kotono held Arata tightly and tried to confess her feelings again. Her voice shook as she explained how she felt. She didn't understand why he kept rejecting her. If they were truly siblings, why couldn't it work? She was scared people would think she was weird, but her love felt too strong to hide. Arata gently turned to face her. He told her she wasn't a bad person, but might be confusing her feelings, especially at her age. Puberty could make emotions feel more intense than they really were. Even though they weren't related by blood, they were still raised as family. He felt it was his job to protect her, not to return her feelings. He promised to stay by her side until she found someone else to love. Heartbroken, Kotono nodded and quietly returned to the bathtub. Arata softly wished her a happy birthday before slipping out of the room, unaware that one of his sisters had overheard the whole thing. Later, Bamri stepped into her father's study, ready to ask questions about their family. Meanwhile, Arata returned to his room wondering what made Kotono confess again. The timing didn't feel like a coincidence. Maybe the news about their adoption gave her the courage to act. When he opened his door, he was surprised to see Siha already sitting on his bed, unimpressed. She asked where he had been. He lied, saying he just went for a walk around the estate, but Saga clearly didn't believe him. Instead of pressing him, she commented on his room, the smallest among all the siblings, but said it felt strangely big tonight. They both remembered how they once played rock, paper, scissors to decide who got which room. Fuka had won every round and claimed the biggest one. Arata, having lost, ended up with the smallest. Arata waited, wondering why Siha was there, but she didn't explain. Then, without warning, she pushed him onto the bed and climbed on top of him. His body tensed as she leaned down and rested her ear against his chest. His thoughts raced. Was Siha about to do the same thing Kotono did? The idea worried him. Ever since their father's announcement, everything felt uncertain. But then she sat up. There was no flirtation in her face, just calm curiosity. It was like she had been checking something and was satisfied with what she found. Stika revealed that she had overheard and seen what happened in the bathroom. Arata pushed her off in frustration, overwhelmed by everything. But Siha stayed calm. She was trying to understand how the family's dynamic had changed now that they knew they weren't biologically related. To her, the confusion in the house, especially Kotono's feelings, made sense. What once seemed impossible was now possible. She explained how society mostly cared about blood relations for biological reasons, not social ones. In her eyes, the old barrier was gone and pretending otherwise was pointless. She watched Arata carefully as she spoke, testing how he felt. She reassured him she wasn't interested in him romantically, but she couldn't say the same for the others. Some of their sisters might come to him eventually. As she left, she reminded him that she was still his older sister and wanted to be addressed with more respect, or at least a cute nickname instead of just her name. When the door shut, Arata collapsed onto his bed, overwhelmed. His thoughts were a mess. Kotono's confession, Siha's strange logic, the family truth. It was all too much. Outside his room, Siha paused. She looked down at her hand, clenched as if trying to stay calm. She stood quietly until Manami noticed her. Without saying anything, Siha walked away and returned to her own room. The next morning, Arata hadn't slept at all. He got ready for school, still weighed down by everything that had happened. As he stepped into the hallway, he stopped in surprise. Banri proudly showed off her new internship outfit and mentioned she let Kotono try on the spare uniform. She asked what he thought. Arata avoided answering directly, hoping to dodge more awkwardness. Banri took his vague response as disapproval. Her mood dropped and she clung to Kotono for comfort. Arata tried to reassure her that the uniform looked nice, then reminded her they were running late. They hurried to get ready, with Banri tugging at Kotono's nurse uniform to help her change quickly. The siblings walked to school together, with the girls chatting ahead while Arata and Shin followed behind. As they passed by groups of students, Arata noticed a few boys staring at the girls with admiration. He watched the girls for a moment. Despite everything that had happened, they seemed carefree and confident. Shin was deep in thought, worried about what might happen if their secret ever got out. The school day went by smoothly. No one mentioned the announcement, but when Arata bent down to change his shoes, he felt the heavy emotions creeping again. He thought about Kotono's confession and Sika's strange behavior. Something had definitely changed. Then Manami appeared. Her club had been canceled, so she was done for the day. Arata noticed that among all his sisters, she seemed the least affected. Still cheerful, still full of energy. He shook his head and walked with her toward the exit. As they walked, a group of girls suddenly surrounded Manami, asking for photos and showering her with compliments. Arata stood to the side, ignored. Only then did he realize just how popular Manami had become. She explained that a photo of her in a boy's uniform had gone viral, and now she had a fan following. Arata felt a little down. She got so much attention without trying, while he couldn't even get noticed by the girl he liked. He pushed the thought aside and asked about her plans. Manami admitted with a nervous laugh that her club had been canceled because she failed a test and was on academic probation. She had to raise her grades before she could go back. Seeing how upset she was, Arata offered to tutor her. Instead of going home, they went to a karaoke booth to study. At first, it went well. But Manami quickly lost focus and got distracted by the karaoke song list. When he quizzed her, she got most answers wrong. Then one of her favorite songs started playing. She jumped up and grabbed the mic, singing with full energy. Arata was about to stop her but laughed when he heard the lyrics. It was about a girl who just wanted to play and avoid studying. It fit the moment perfectly. He gave up on tutoring and chose to enjoy this silly moment instead. Afterward, as they were paying at the counter, Arata spotted Yokoyama with her boyfriend. He panicked and tried to hide. Manami noticed and guessed right away that Yokoyama was the girl he liked. As they walked home, she thanked him for spending time with her. The day helped balance out the stress from the night before. She then said she wanted to ask their dad about her real parents someday. She teased him a little, calling him her upperclassman instead of her brother. But then she got serious and told him their bond, 15 years of growing up together, was real, no matter what biology said. That would never change. She encouraged him not to feel bad about Yokoyama already having someone else, revealing that Uka had gossiped about it earlier. To cheer him up, she listed his good traits, how kind, athletic, and dependable he was. Then she playfully patted his head and called him Senpai. Once home, Manami handed Oka a box of mini cakes and returned the missing AirPods she had borrowed. She apologized, but Oka waved it off, told her to keep the AirPods, and invited her to share the cakes, a quiet sign of peace between them. Arata began his morning like always, following his usual routine. After stepping out of the bathroom, he saw Kotono already dressed and ready for school. She froze when she saw him, gave a quick and awkward good morning, then rushed downstairs. Arata stood there for a moment, watching her leave. The atmosphere between them felt tense. He wondered if Kotono had accepted what he said to her in the bathroom a few nights ago. Maybe she understood that even though they weren't related by blood, their relationship shouldn't change. Or maybe she was just avoiding him. Either way, it made him uneasy. Before he could think more, Seiya came around the corner and caught him staring into space. She asked if teenage boys always daydream that much. Arata said hello, but Seiya quickly told him to call her Seiya-chan. He hesitated, but gave in when he saw she was serious. Happy with that, Seiya started talking more casually. She mentioned Kotono's odd behavior and said things still seemed awkward between them. Arata didn't get a chance to reply because Manami appeared, cheerful as ever, calling him Senpai. Seiya raised an eyebrow and questioned the nickname, saying it's usually used for mature and respectable people. Arata sighed as both girls went downstairs, wondering why his mornings were always so crazy. Later at school, Arata spotted Yokoyama at her locker, chatting and laughing with a friend. As she walked away, he found himself watching her. Then Luca showed up behind him and started teasing him. She told him he should confess to Yokoyama, but Arata quickly said no, Yokoyama already had a boyfriend. Luca was surprised and said she hadn't heard that. She then walked off to her group of friends who got excited when she brought up the upcoming sea park trip for Kotono's birthday. Arata watched Auka from a distance and thought about how easily she fit in with others. She was always the center of attention, and he almost admired that. Part of him wanted to tell everyone how bratty she could be, but he knew that would only backfire. Some of Uka's friends noticed Arata and said he looked different from Shin, but was still handsome. A few even whispered they wouldn't mind dating him. Luca, embarrassed, tried to talk about his bad habits but ended up saying good things by accident. Realizing this, she blushed and hurried her friends away, muttering that it was too hot in the hallway. Finally, the weekend came and the whole family went to the sea park. Luca was excited and looked around with wide eyes. When the mascot walked by, she and Minami rushed over to play. Soon, Minami said she was hungry, so Banri and Arata offered to get food. When they came back carrying trays full of snacks, they found their siblings were gone. They sat on a nearby bench while Arata tried calling each sibling, but no one answered. Banri shrugged and said they should enjoy the park on their own. A date, she joked. Since there was so much food, Arata ate most of it. By the time they started walking again, he felt too full and sluggish. Banri stayed close to him, holding his arm and leaning into him. Her behavior was more touchy than usual. Arata felt uncomfortable and tried to step away, saying they shouldn't act like a couple. Banri just laughed, saying they probably didn't even look like siblings to strangers. Arata couldn't stop thinking about how close she had been. When Banri noticed, she teased him, making him more embarrassed. Banri, confident and aware of her looks, told Arata he was lucky to have a beautiful older sister. Arata saw a few men looking at her and knew she was right. She carried herself with ease. They went to ride the roller coaster. Banri walked up the stairs ahead of him, and her skirt moved with each step, making Arata look away. Distracted, he tripped and fell. Banri helped him up like nothing happened, and they rode the coaster together. Banri enjoyed the ride, but Arata felt dizzy and sick afterward. He tried calling the others again. This time, Shin answered. Arata told him they were in the nature zone, and the rest realized they had gone to the wrong area. Luca guessed the reason why the group had gotten separated. Kotono was quiet. The rest decided to focus on celebrating Kotono's birthday without worrying too much. Meanwhile, Banri and Arata sat on a bench again. She offered him a churro, but he refused, still feeling sick. As she ate, Arata asked how she felt about finding out they were all adopted. Banri said it was surprising, but she didn't want it to bother her. She planned to talk to their dad more when the time was right. She asked Arata how he was feeling. He didn't mention Kotono or Sia, but admitted the news made him feel strange. He was afraid things between the siblings would change in weird ways. Seeing that he was troubled, Banri patted his head gently. It reminded her of when he used to cry and run to her for comfort. Arata pushed her hand away, embarrassed. Banri told him not to worry. She would always care about him. To her, they were family no matter what. Just then, a little girl tripped nearby and spilled 2 drinks. Arata stepped in front of Banri and got soaked. The girl apologized, and Arata smiled at her kindly. Banri looked at his wet clothes and sighed. Arata quietly said that from now on he would protect her too, because that's what little brothers do. The girl and her mom thanked them and walked off. Soon, the rest of the siblings found them. They stopped, surprised to see Arata dripping wet, but no one asked about it. They all walked to the next attraction together. As night came, the park lit up. Luca pretended to be a princess and Minami acted as her prince. Arata needed to use the bathroom, so Shin and Kotono went with him. With them gone, Sia took the chance to talk. She told Banri, Uka, and Minami what she saw between Arata and Kotono a few nights ago. They were shocked. Sia reassured them. Arata rejected Kotono. She had even tested him herself to be sure. Luca was surprised by Sia's method, but Seiya said it had to be done. They agreed not to confront Kotono. Luca then revealed that Kotono had confessed to Arata once before in the game room. Banri was worried but hoped Kotono would move on. Seiya wasn't sure, thinking Kotono's feelings might grow now that she knew they weren't really related. Banri told them she had spoken with their father. Just then, Arata, Shin, and Kotono came back. The others acted like they had just been choosing the next ride. As the night ended, they visited the souvenir shop. Minami and Seiya ran off to grab a stuffed mascot. Arata stood near the entrance and suddenly saw someone who looked like Yokoyama. He froze. Luca came to stand beside him and they walked together. She made a joke about his boring hobbies and added, "Now that we're not really twins." Arata quickly said it didn't matter. He would always see her as his twin. Luca said he would have to face the truth eventually, but admitted it was fun pretending. They had always been in sync, even during simple games such as rock, paper, scissors. Then Oka suddenly looked at him seriously and said it quietly. She liked him. The day before their amusement park trip, Arata told Shin he felt confused about how to act around his sisters after what happened with Kotono. Shin reminded him they weren't blood-related, so feelings wouldn't be wrong. Shin also mentioned he told Oka about the Kotono situation. Arata was worried, but Shin said Oka admired how he handled it and even joked that his life felt like a rom-com. Back to the present. Out of nowhere, Oka said she liked him. Arata froze, but she quickly explained it was just a thank you, not a love confession. Arata was relieved and teased her. Uka joked back but walked off embarrassed, hiding her true feelings. The next morning, Arata trained to clear his head. Minami joined him and smiled at his dedication. As she watched, she remembered overhearing Uka tell Arata she loved him at the park. She wanted to ask about it but chickened out. Later, she asked if something happened with Oka, but Arata thought she meant a fight and said things were fine. Minami left disappointed, wishing she'd been clearer. Later, Arata accidentally walked in on Siha changing. She laughed it off and said it was like a rom-com. He noticed their mother's ring near the sink. Siha said it was hers now. Arata felt comforted that she hadn't changed even after learning they weren't blood siblings. That afternoon, Banri visited Arata's room and teased him. Then she casually asked him out on a date. They went shopping for a phone and Banri joked about booking a hotel, making Arata panic. She laughed it off, saying it was just a joke. Afterward, they shared ice cream and laughed about old memories. Banri asked how he was doing, and though Arata brushed it off, he appreciated her support. Back home, Kotono saw a photo of Arata and Banri eating ice cream. She smiled, then looked sad and saved the picture without replying. Banri saw the message had been read but got no response from Kotono. That made her change her mind about staying out longer, and she told Arata they should head home. Arata noticed something was off but didn't say anything. As they walked, he looked at her necklace, another one of their mother's keepsakes. He told her she should be with her boyfriend instead of wasting time with him. Banri just smiled, ruffled his hair, and walked ahead. Later, Banri called Minami to say she had tried to figure out Arata's feelings, but it seemed like he still saw them all as just siblings. Minami was in the bath and wasn't so sure. She still remembered hearing Uka say she loved Arata. Trying to convince herself she was wrong, she sent Banri a text saying she must have misheard, but by mistake, she sent it to the whole sister group chat. She quickly deleted the message and hoped no one saw it. Just then, Uka came in, annoyed that Minami was taking so long. She saw Minami's nervous face but didn't ask anything. Minami quietly sighed, thinking everything was okay. But across the hall, Kotono sat alone, holding her phone. She had read the message before it was deleted. During a regular family dinner, the mood at the table is light and filled with small talk and the sound of clinking dishes. But Arata keeps glancing at Siha. She eats quietly, her face hard to read but clearly distant. While it's normal for Siha to be quiet, tonight something feels off. Arata remembers seeing the same look on her face the other day at the train station. After dinner, while everyone else leaves, Arata finds Siha alone in the common room, sitting with her usual calm grace. He walks past her, thinking he should leave her alone, but his curiosity wins. He turns back and gently asks if something is bothering her. To his surprise, Siha looks up. Her face softens a bit. Instead of giving a direct answer, she asks if he wants to play Twister. As she sets up the mat and brings out the spinner, she starts explaining her reason. She tells him that when she was in his room the other night, she felt something strange. With entrance exams coming up, she doesn't like feeling unsure. She wants to play Twister to test a theory. Arata is confused and a bit shocked. He wonders what she really means. But Siha stays calm and tells him there's nothing inappropriate about it. She just needs to understand her feelings. She says the news about them being adopted hasn't changed anything. Their relationship is still theirs to define. When Arata hesitates, Siha reminds him that she helped him study and his grades got better. So now he can return the favor by helping her focus. Feeling cornered by her oddly logical reasoning, Arata agrees to play. He steps onto the mat, carefully placing his foot on a color, making sure to keep some distance. Siha frowns and says he's being too careful. Arata defends himself, saying he's still playing by the rules. On her turn, she moves closer to him and uses his own logic to justify it. The tension grows, but they keep playing. Arata starts thinking maybe they'll get through the game without any real contact. But Siha changes her approach. She positions herself right in his way, bending into a pose that's both awkward and suggestive. Arata is completely flustered and says he gives up. Siha glares at him. He's in a much easier pose than she is. If he quits now, it would look like she's affecting him emotionally. Arata looks at her more closely and realizes she's struggling to keep her balance. It's not as easy for her as she's pretending. So instead of quitting, he decides to keep going. Sega spins the wheel and tells him to put his foot on the last blue circle, which is very close to her. He hesitates but moves his leg carefully, trying not to touch her. Still, his foot brushes against her. Sia doesn't react emotionally. Instead, her mind shifts into a more scientific mode. She starts listing hormones linked to happiness: endorphins, serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin. She focuses on the last two, which are connected to attachment. That makes her uneasy. She spins again, needing more proof. As the spinner stops, she places her hand on green, facing away from Arata. The position, though unintentional, still looks awkward. Arata stays quiet, watching her. Her words are becoming more personal, and he realizes she's trying to explain a way for them to be close without it being wrong. The pressure builds inside Arata. He wants to say something, maybe end the game. But before he can, Sia slips and falls. Arata stiffens, annoyed and confused. She could have landed anywhere else. But Sia simply gets up and says she's too tired to care where she landed. Arata tries to stay mad, but his mind keeps replaying the moment their bodies touched. Sia calmly puts away the game, her mood steady again. To her, the experiment is done. She's convinced that what she felt before wasn't real. Now she can focus on her studies. Before leaving, she thanks Arata quietly. He stays frozen, staring at the empty space she left behind. He doesn't understand what just happened. He sighs in frustration and lets out a loud scream into the room. Suddenly, Wuka walks in, surprising him. She asks if Sia is around, and Arata quickly says no. Wuka doesn't seem bothered and asks if he wants to hang out. With nothing else to do, Arata agrees. They head to the gaming room where Arata carries snacks. He remembers how Oka used to tackle him every time she lost at games when they were younger. But what's been on his mind more lately is that time he thought she confessed to him. Things have felt strange ever since. When he enters the room, Uka is already on the couch, ready to play. Arata is surprised. She was never good at video games. But today, she looks serious. She tells him to hurry up, and once they start, Arata loses 5 times in a row. Uka smiles proudly after every win. For a while, Arata relaxes, thinking maybe this really is just about fun. She looks genuinely happy. He watches her closely. Uka had always worked hard, and now people were starting to notice in school and sports. Some of his classmates even said they liked her, which doesn't surprise him as much as it used to. As they play, Uka gets so into the game that she leans against his legs. When she wins again, she jokes about how rusty he's gotten. Arata smiles, thinking she really is cute. He starts trying harder and eventually begins winning. As her losing streak continues, Uka says she's taking a bathroom break. But instead of leaving, she sneaks up behind him and puts him in a playful chokehold. The move's clumsy, and their bodies press together as they wrestle. Annoyed, Arata flips them, ending up on top. They both freeze. Uka stares up at him, surprised. Arata stays still, trying to act normal. He reminds himself she started it. But the moment still makes him nervous. He tells her not to be so rough. Uka, still breathing heavily, looks at him and says softly, "You've really grown." Then she quickly gets up and leaves the room. At the doorway, she pauses for a moment, her heart pounding. Back in the room, Arata sits in silence, thinking about what she said. Maybe she just meant he's stronger now, but her voice made it feel deeper. Tired, he decides to end the night. What he doesn't know is that the cabinet door in the room slowly opens. Inside, Kotono had been hiding the whole time. She saw everything. The next day goes by like normal. School, clubs, homework. That evening, Arata talks with his father, Kaname. They talk about the family, and Kaname asks if Arata likes someone. Arata says everyone's acting more lively than usual, probably because the adoption news is still fresh. Elsewhere in the house, the girls are watching a romance drama. It ends on a cliffhanger, and they all groan. The mood shifts to playful talk about dream love confessions. Uka and Sia share their high standards. Manami tells Kotono she's too young to worry about love. Banri jokes that girls who act like they don't care usually fall the hardest. They all agree that what really matters is who confesses, not how. After the older girls leave, Kotono stays behind, thinking deeply. Suddenly, she says she's in love with Arata. The room goes silent. Banri tries to laugh it off, but Kotono stands by her words. From that moment on, she says clearly they are now all her rivals for Arata's heart. Back in the room, Kaname talks seriously with Arata about love. As the oldest son, Arata has responsibilities. Arata asks his father why he chose their mother. Kaname first says it was her looks, but what made him fall in love was her calm, steady strength. She didn't like having her photo taken, something Kaname found charming. He then brings up room 8, the mysterious room he promised to show them when they were older. Arata remembers the promise. Before leaving, he tells his father that he'll take care of the family from now on. After Arata leaves, Kaname looks at his wife's photo and whispers proudly. He's glad he adopted Arata. Years later, Arata stands outside, watching his daughter running around the yard. Her laughter fills the air. She runs up to him, then turns and calls out to her mother, whose face remains unseen as she walks toward them. That marks the end of today's anime recap. If you enjoyed the video and want more of it, please support the channel by leaving a like and subscribe. Let's help us reach a current goal of 10K subscribers.